This episode is brought to you by the Neon Nail Company.
Welcome into the fourth episode of the Market Like a Millennial Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ittenauer, and today, folks, integrity is defined by the conditions that you decide to show up in. My voice is gone. I can barely talk, yet I'm still here. The show must go on, and today we are going to talk about what's going to take you from being good to being great in 2024 by a shift in mindset. The feedback has been great since we launched the podcast, and the amount of people that are reaching out, seeking advice has been almost overwhelming, but it's been a breath of fresh air for me, helping people on their own journey and getting to a better place with producing content. However, it also has exposed flaws that we definitely need to address on this podcast. Mindset is key, and ultimately, I can give you guys all the secrets when it comes to social media, roofing sales, or anything else that we decide to cover on this podcast. If you guys do not have a receptive mindset where you guys are able to take that information in, be able to analyze it, and ultimately be able to transition it into a practitioner's mindset and go out and do it, we are not going to get anywhere fast. Now, you guys might be saying, well, Andrew, I don't want to take a step back. I just want to get further in depth about the different principles that we're talking about when it comes to creating social media content. And I get you guys. However, this is a big problem, right? You have to be able to receive the different principles and lessons that you are learning, whether you're listening to my podcast or anyone else's podcast out there. You hear all the time, I give 99% of the stuff that I do away for free. Why? Because ultimately, people won't do it. Which this leads me to my first lesson of developing a receptive mindset, which is you have to be able to take the information as prescribed. You can't do it your way. Oftentimes, we'll seek out advice from our peers, loved ones, spouses, and we'll get a proper course of action that we can take that will give us a provided solution. Now, I'm not here trying to cast any stones that are unwarranted. However, it just seems every single time that my wife asks me to put together a toy and tells me to read the instructions after Christmas, I just seem to overlook it and do it the way that I think it's supposed to be done. And unfortunately, I don't get the desired result. And it's the same principle when it comes to absorbing information, whether it's from a podcast or an in-person demonstration. You have to be able to take that information and apply it correctly and do it as prescribed. Now, growing up, I had a dad with very high expectations and a lot of great coaches, which made me a pretty darn good athlete. I wrestled in high school and college. I played football both ways from my sophomore year on. And one thing that you learn when you have great coaches is that whatever they tell you to do, you do it. And what you find is that a lot of the times, the people that are starting on the field that are providing the most value for the team to win are usually not the most talented people on the field. It's the people who are disciplined enough to do the small things the right way each and every time. And what I learned from that time in my life is that if you're on the offensive line, whether you make or miss a block is decided by the foot you step with. And in wrestling, the way you decide to set up a takedown ultimately determines the probability of whether you'll get it or not. And in life, the small disciplined decisions you make every day add up to the overall success that you have. All of those examples require one thing from the person doing it, which is listening with intent to carry out the actions exactly as prescribed by the coach. Which leads me to my next step, which is transitioning to a practitioner's mindset. Once that we absorb the information, we now go out and execute. And how do we get good at executing? If you have an employer that invest in having quality people around you. You see everyone else in your organization closing and you're not getting it. Sit down and practice with someone at your organization until you do get it. right? We talked about that a little bit in the first episode of the Market Like a Millennial podcast. But also, if you guys invest in these digital communities out there in the roofing industry, Adam Bensman has a Pitch Pro movement where he has over 240 videos that you can learn to go up and sell roofs door to door. How much are you getting out and taking notes and putting those principles into action when you're going door to door and measuring your success by tracking? And finally, for the people that spend thousands and thousands of dollars on going to every conference in the United States and don't even decide to take notes. Wasting time at a roofing conference is not acceptable here. Go waste time on a beach somewhere with your family. I would much rather you do that. If you're going to these events, if you're spending time on self-development, we have to be able to streamline the process of absorbing information and executing right after. Absorbing information and executing again. And doing that over and over again. That's ultimately how you have breakthroughs and get to the next level. And you guys might be saying to yourself, well, this was a pretty easy episode, right? Absorb information, execute. But the ultimate goal is to get to the point where it's committed to memory. And even once that it's committed to memory, you still have to perform maintenance. Just another takeaway for you guys. One of the things that I like to do after a sit is I sit in my car, and if things go exactly how I planned and I ultimately get the deal, I sit there and I try to decipher why someone did business with me, right? And if they didn't do business with me, I try to walk through and find where I went wrong. Even at the level that I'm at in my career, hundreds of roofs sold in the nicest of neighborhoods, executing with a very high closing rate, right? There's still times where I find chinks in the chain of execution. And I have to go back to the drawing board and I have to perform maintenance by going in with someone and practicing and working out those kinks. And what better choice of words than maintenance? If you guys have listened to my previous episodes on the Market Like a Millennial podcast, you know I like to use these off-the-wall analogies that do a pretty good job of explaining what I'm trying to get to. And I'll hit you with another one here. No matter the vehicle, the oil still has to be changed. The tires have to be rotated. And we are no different, folks. No matter if you have a Honda Accord or a Ferrari, they both need to be maintained. So if you guys are not practicing, if you guys are not maintaining, even if you're performing at the highest of levels, you are leaving money on the table. And that concludes this episode of the Market Like a Millennial podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ittenauer, and you guys want to hit that subscribe button because come 2024, we are kicking our content into overdrive. And I look forward to seeing you guys then. Happy New Year's to everyone. Let's go kill it in 2024.